mechanism not through the L-type calcium channels. But also, in addition to adding some calcium to the cells, about 10% to the inside, in the ventricle, more closer to 50-50 in atrium. So that's one of the sources, and the other one is calcium released in the sarcoplasm particularly. And sort of these two mechanisms actually act as an amplification system. An amplification system. Here's an example from an experiment that was done on probably and made in preparation using the papillary muscle strip. Remember those little projections from the ventricle, which are part of the ventricle? And you can color it one time. So this is the normal. So in the heart, the height and duration of the action potential not only triggers the contraction, but it also modulates the strength of contraction to some extent. And that's due to this amplification process. So this experiment measures tension in papillary muscle for the force generated, and somebody has gone through the trouble of putting a microelectrode in one of the cells in this papillary that is not a single cell with many cells, and look at the effect of some agent on the action potential. The agent that was used is isopropyl noradrenaline, strictly a beta agonist. You've heard of alpha and beta receptors from Dr. Barton. This is beta, pure beta, no alpha. And the first part of the experiment is the control, which is this action potential here. Nothing's been done, some sort of salt solution. And this is the tension that it generates of the force, which is really small. When you apply this beta agonist, it actually does some things to calcium channels, or the L-type calcium channel, change the threshold, and it causes the activation of calcium channels which are probably silent in this preparation, don't do much. So when you add beta agonist, it phosphorylates some of these channels, so you get more calcium channels, and you also change the threshold. So after this, you look at the action potential, you get the plateau is enhanced. But look at the change in force. It's gone up by a factor of about 4. So that's the amplification process I'm talking about. So if you got to activate a few more L-type calcium channels in muscle, the force increases quite a bit more. So that's the amplification process. And this demonstrates that well. So this is true in the heart, the height and duration of the action potential. Not only triggers contraction, but modulate the strength of contraction as well. So that's another way of changing the contraction in cardiac chambers themselves, by changing the amount of calcium channels that go in, or calcium channels that are activated. So that activates the force substantially. So that's the amplification process of calcium-induced calcium release. So it says, just to summarize, CICR, calcium-induced calcium release, involves L channels, non-energy receptors, or calcium release unit, and of course the calcium is always stored in the SR in bonds with a protein called sequestrin. The mechanism of how calcium binds to the energy receptors of the release of this calcium bound is currently controversial and not certain. Something to do with charge potentially, nobody knows for sure. Bit of a black hole. And here's the slide we've seen before. All Cells have calcium channels, some activate or androgen receptors, some actually directly activate the filaments. And you know, all the mechanisms that move calcium are involved in the movement of calcium out. There's an ATP pump, there's a sodium potassium pump, and of course the calcium chamber, which depends on sodium gradient. We talked about that briefly. Takes out about 10% of the calcium. Most of the calcium is taken up by ATP-driven calcium pumps, which are, of course, regulated by another protein called phospholamban, and that regulates the speed. Phospholamban can be phosphorylated by cyclic AMP, which is generated by the activation of beta receptors in the cell, and that speeds it up. So when you want a faster heart rate, take calcium up faster, you simply activate this guy here, and it reduces the inhibition on the ATP-driven pumps. So we talked about this briefly before, so just to remind you again. So the calcium that goes in through these channels has an amplification effect of the calcium released by the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So you can not only activate the cell, but you can also modulate how strongly it contracts. So the strength of contraction of individual pyromyres is being modified in several ways. Hormones such as adrenaline, noradrenaline, increases calcium burns. Adrenaline also increases conduction velocity. You have a stronger contraction, conduction velocity, and all the conducting pathways. We talked about sarcomere length, and that's part of something called Frank-Starling law, which we'll talk about quite a bit later. And of course, the other thing that modifies the strength of contraction is how much oxygen you're getting. If you're short of oxygen, because of problems with coronary arteries, then of course anoxia will change the strength of contraction and it will reduce it. So, one other point. This is an artistic representation. It's not pre-measured. And it shows you two things. One, the action potential. And two, the tension that's developed by, say, a single cardiac myocyte. The thing to know, the force generated and the electrical activity which activates that force is almost superimposed. They're on the same time scale. That means that in the pure sense, or in the sort of the physiological sense, when we're all normal, you cannot sum contractions in cardiac muscle as you can in splenic muscle. So every action potential in a cardiac myocyte or a cardiac cell generates a single contractile force. Now I know there are pathological situations where these generate a little delay after depolarizations, which might give you a little changes in tension, but the idea is for every action potential in a muscle cell, you get a single contraction. And that's what you want if you want the chambers to be effective pumps. Skeletal muscle, on the other hand, can be summed, and all the contractions are summed contractions due to pulse rates. In this case, one action potential gives you one contraction. That's physiologically important. Question for the final exam. Why do you not want summation in cardiac muscle? Well, So now we're going to talk a little bit about the pump, overall effect of the pump and how it connects to the blood vessels, or the plumbing as I refer to. So basically, just give you some numbers. Volume of blood in a 70 kilogram individual is usually about 5 liters, or 5,000 mils. The weight of this organ, that's the atria and the ventricle, about 12 ounces, or 300 to 500 grams. The volume of each relaxed ventricle in that sort of individual is about 140 to 200 mils. That's the volume. It varies. Of course, depending on the size of the individual. If you're a 6'9" basketball player, obviously your volume is going to be bigger. The cardiac output, the volume of blood leaving the left ventricle at rest is about 5 liters per minute. So basically, in 1 minute, the total blood volume should go through one of the chambers, either the left ventricle or the right ventricle. And we can calculate something called the stroke volume, just guesstimating the fact that you have 500 mils per minute coming out of the left ventricle, 70 beats per minute. So approximately half your ventricular volume is pumped under rest conditions. About half the blood volume is all pumped per beat. The other important fact about the two chambers, the right and the left ventricle, the pulmonary artery and aorta are basically in series. So one of the important facts about these two chambers, the fact that they're in series, means that you don't want any problems. The right and left ventricles have to pump about the same volume of blood over a fixed length of time. Now it may change on a beat-to-beat basis. One side of the beat gets a little harder than the other or a little less, but over time, a fixed amount of time, seconds, the right and left ventricles, because they're in series, have to pump the same volume of blood. Otherwise, you get a situation where you get pooling of blood somewhere, and you don't want that. So the two chambers have to be, they're in series, so they have to pump roughly the same volume of blood over 5 or 6 beats. And just reading here, ventricles eject about half their total volume per beat. Depends if it's exercise or exercising, it's a little different. If you're sawing logs 2 in the morning after studying for the exam, it's going to be a little different as well. The other way you can clinically, what people look at when they use ultrasound to measure velocities, volume changes, they use what is known as the ejection fraction. And they look to measure volumes, and diastolic volume minus end systolic volume. This is the relaxed state. This is the contractions after systole, and the percentage, and this is usually around 50%. It falls to about 30, and that can happen, then you're in a bit of trouble. So you want to keep this around 50. That's another way of looking at it instead of stroke volume. So, let's have a quick look at what happens in one side of the chamber, or one side of the heart. And what we're going to look at is the left side. The right side is almost identical, except the basal pressures are quite a bit less. So we're going to look at the left atrium, but primarily we're going to be looking at what happens in the left ventricle. What's happened in the right is more or less the same, except the maximum pressures are quite a bit lower, they're about 7. All right, so we're going to use what is called a pressure volume diagram. and tell you something about what happens to the valves and the pressure. This is what I'm talking about. Note, pressure is fairly high, and this is the volume. So this sort of fits into what I told you about volume. So during one contraction or one beat of the heart, this is roughly what goes on. We'll start at A. I guess that's the beginning. And we have what is called the inflow phase. So basically, blood is coming from the left atrium and moving into the left ventricle. So basically, at this stage, valve, the aortic valve would be closed, and this valve would be open. That's the mitral. So you have what's called the inflow phase, and it depends on the pressure of the left atrium, and you get blood flowing into the left ventricle. So that's the inflow phase. So basically, the aortic valve is closed, the mitral valve is open, and you get blood flowing into the ventricle. So what you get is an increase in ventricular volume. The ventricle is filling. And it's filling primarily due to the pressure difference between the atrium and the ventricle. Then you get to this stage here, and this is the case where the atrium actually contracts. So in this sequence, the atrium actually contracts, and you get a nice little blip, change in volume and change in pressure. But remember, day one, I told you that the atrium was not a big player in pumping blood, and it's merely a chamber to hold blood so that when the valve opens, it can move blood in. There is a bit of a shift there. It's not a big deal. It would be important, or more important, if the heart rate is shortened, as it might be during exercise. But under resting conditions, atrium contributes very little to the actual filling, because most of the filling occurs due to the pressure differences. At point C, you start to get ventricular contraction. That will be preceded slightly by the QRS complex in the ventricle. So the ventricle being depolarized and starts to contract. As soon as the ventricle starts to contract, the mitral valve will close. So this is a stage where both valves are closed, and you get what is known as isovolumetric contraction. Isovolumetric means both valves are closed, the ventricle is generating pressure, and there's no flow anywhere. At this stage, so that continues on for a while, and we reach this point here, and what happens here is that the pressure in the ventricle exceeds that of the major artery, and you get opening of the aortic valve. So you get opening of the aortic valve, and you get what is called the outflow phase. The phase which is called rapid ejection. So most of the volume is decreased to about E. Around here somewhere you get the T wave, and the ventricle is starting to relax, so you get reduced ejection, and it goes down to this point here. So this is where the volume of blood in the ventricle is emptying into the arterial system. When you get to point F, the pressure in the aorta becomes greater for a major artery than the pressure in the ventricle. So the aortic valve closes. So basically what I'm saying at that point F is that the pressure here in the aorta is greater than here, and it's the closure of the valve. And of course, just before that, you have the C wave of the electrocardiogram. That meant that the ventricle starts to relax. Pumps most of its blood out of there anyway, and it's starting to relax. So we have a situation again where the aortic valve is closed, the mitral valve is still closed, and you have another phase which is called isovolumetric relaxation phase. So the pressure falls very rapidly in the ventricle. It falls out at point A, and at point A, the pressure in the atrium is greater than that in the ventricle. So the pressure here is greater than pressure here, and you then have opening of the mitral valve. So the mitral valve will open. And you go through this cycle again. Filling phase, atrial contraction, isovolumetric contraction, ejection phase, isovolumetric relaxation. So that's one activation of the ventricle to generate a volume change of about 7 units. And it's gone into the major artery, which is the aorta. So basically, just to summarize again, the number of phases in artificially changes in the cardiac cycle, you need a minimum of 4. From the point of view of the ventricles in the position of their valves, consider the left ventricle, right is similar, the pressure is lower. There's the inflow phase, the inlet valve is open, and the outlet valve is closed, that's the aortic. You get at the end, sort of the end of the inflow phase, you get the QRS complex of the EKG or ECG. No flow situation, both valves are closed. Outflow phase, outlet valve, which is the aortic, is open, and the inlet valve is closed. You get the flow, you lose about 70 mils of blood from the ventricle, and then you go through isovolumetric relaxation, no flow, both valves closed until the pressure in the atrium is greater than the pressure in the ventricle. So basically the idea is, of course, the valves open and close due to pressure gradients. I know that the atrioventricular valve, the mitral and tricuspid have a capillary muscle attached to them, but that's mainly to keep the valves closing properly. But the valves in the heart open and close due to pressure gradients. That's it. Are there any questions? Okay, so we'll now try and stick this all together a little bit more. And we'll do what is called, go through what is called the cardiac cycle. Or, the Weyer's diagram. Some gentlemen in the U.S. decided we were going to put this all together. And this came shortly after the time that electronics had hit the scene. You could actually measure pressure changes and flow changes. And it had been shown that you could stick a cannula into your heart without killing yourself. So this is old stuff. But it's the cardiac cycle, and for many years it was the gold standard for diagnosis of various things in the heart, valve problems, enlarged heart, that sort of stuff. So it was the gold standard. That's not the case anymore. We now have ultrasound, we now have dye techniques, so technology has really gone, but this used to be the gold standard. So it's the relationship as a function of time rather than just looking for one cycle. The relationship of the various mechanical events occurring with each other and with the electrical event provides a basis for clinical diagnosis in cardiology. Okay, that was the gold standard, still used. But there are other techniques which tell you more. So the cardiac cycle is separated into two parts. One's called systole, which is a contraction phase, and the other one is called diastole. This is an example. For example, the heart rate is 75 beats per minute, so there's about 800 milliseconds between beats. So cycle length is about 800 milliseconds. In this case here, systole or contraction phase is about 300 milliseconds, and diastole is a little longer. So now, rather than being just one single contraction of the ventricle with no time relationship, we're now going to put this into what happens in the ventricle, atrium, as a function of time. What do you want? So, again, we'll look at the left ventricle. The two valves are, of course, the aortic valve and the mitral. And this is an example of the cardiac cycle. Telling you all the good stuff that goes on in your heart as you're sitting there deciding where you're going to go for coffee after this lecture. So this is the cardiac cycle. It's got some of the same stuff that we talked about minutes ago. So basically, I'll show you with all these little. This is the pressure in the aorta, this dotted line. So for most of you, it'll be about 110 over 60, I guess, somewhere along the line. This solid line is, of course, the pressure in the ventricle. And this little shorter dotted line is pressure in the atrium. This is using ultrasound, I guess, to measure aortic flow. So tell them how much flow liters per minute. This is the ventricular volume. And lo and behold, right down here is, of course, the ECG, standard ECG. And of course, there's some heart sounds that we'll talk about here. So, we'll start the cycle in the middle of something called diastasis. Diastasis, or decreased filling of the ventricle. In this case, the AV valve, so the mitral is open, a little blood flows from the atrium into the ventricle. There's an increase in volume and pressure in the atrium and ventricle due to high venous pressure. The P wave occurs at the end of this phase. And the aortic valve is closed. So we're starting right here at the beginning. The aortic valve is closed. And here we have the P wave of the ECG. There's a little bit of a change in pressure. That's a little lift and pressure change. The mitral valve is open. And we get on to the situation where we have the QRS complex of EKG, which signifies that the ventricle has been activated and it's going to contract. So, soon as the ventricle starts to contract, the pressure increases and the mitral valve closes due to the pressure differences. So you start out with the isovolumetric contraction phase. And that keeps going until you approach the pressure in the aorta. Once you exceed the pressure in the aortic valve opens. And you should be able to see there's a large change in volume of the ventricle. So most of the blood is being kicked out during this period of rapid ejection and reduced ejection. Somewhere in the middle of this you have the T wave of the electrocardiogram. And the ventricle starts to relax. And when you approach the pressure of the aorta, and the aortic pressure exceeds that of the ventricle, the aortic valve closes, and you can hear that as one of the heart sounds, S2. And that's largely due to the vibration of the valve leaflets and the ventricular walls. And then you go through the isovolumetric relaxation phase, and when the pressure in the atrium exceeds the pressure in the ventricle, the mitral valve will open. So just to go back to the atrium, you get venous return from the circulation in the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava, and the pressure is slowly rising. So that's the venous return. The pressure is not great. It's a few millimeters of mercury at best. And that's the situation there. And of course, at this situation, there is no more volume decrease. I'll go back to the words. So, aortic valve contraction, some blood enters the ventricular water, the aortic pressure is increasing. Get the QRS complex and ventricular depolarization and contraction. When the ventricular pressure exceeds the pressure, the AV valve closes, and you have the isovolumetric contraction phase until the pressure in the ventricle is greater than the aortic pressure. So when the ventricular pressure is greater than the aortic pressure, the aortic valve opens. You have the rapid ejection phase, which causes an elevation of aortic pressure and a reduction of ventricular volume. And there's a period of decreased ejection. The change in the volume is less rapid, and the aortic and ventricular pressure tends to drop off. When the volume flow becomes zero or reverses, the aortic valve closes, the ventricles relax, and since both valves are closed, this is isovolumetric relaxation. So that's the relationship. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, there's always blood coming back into the left atrium from the lungs, and it is increasing the pressure and filling up the atrium. The atrium is storing all the blood to come in. So when the pressure in the ventricle falls below that of the atrium, the AV valve or the mitral opens, and you have the rapid ventricular filling. After opening of that valve, the major ventricular filling occurs because of pressure differences, not atrial systole, although it does contribute a little, not a lot. Now, this is under rest. If you're exercising, your heart rate becomes faster, and the atrium will start to contract earlier on in the cycle, and you can, during exercise, when you have higher heart rates, the atrium can contribute about 25% to the ventricular filling during contraction. So it gets bigger as the heart rate increases. But at rest, there's little or no effect. Small effect. Okay, heart sound. First heart sound is usually closure of the AV valves, mitral and tricuspid. And it occurs roughly at the termination of atrial contraction, has this love sound. And the second heart sound is usually the closure of the aortic and pulmonary valve. They may actually be split, so if you're a good cardiologist, you can actually see the difference. There's a little time delay between the two. But in general, after having done this in these labs for years and listening to the tapes of these things, I can then find a split, but good cardiologists can't. So that's the heart sound. This one here, in fact, is vibration of the valve leaflets and some of the ventricular tissue. Well, that's what the sound is due to. And the other point I want to make is note the movement of the valve leaflets is passive. They open and close due to pressure gradients. That's it for valves. One other thing I didn't point out last time when we talked about anatomy is, in fact, the heart receives blood supply, and that's very crucial. If you don't get enough blood supply, you wake up in the middle of the night, you think Lucy the elephant from Storyland is sitting on your chest. It's called a heart attack. Other pains as well, but that's one of the common ones. And if you look at where the coronary artery, this is the right one, this is the left one, it's not very big. The other thing is when the heart contracts, of course, it squeezes all the blood vessels, so they don't get much blood. So most of the circulation into the ventricle occurs between beats. So here's an example. This is one cardiac cycle showing the aortic pressure, ventricular pressure, atrial pressure, and this is between beats. So most of the blood flow in the left coronary output, arteries, for example, occurs between the beats. So most of your blood flow into the ventricle and atrium between actual successive contractions. That's why when people have problems with circulation in the heart, and they have chest pains that sometimes occur during exercise, put them on a treadmill, decrease this time here, and of course you don't get enough blood in there during exercise, and you start to feel chest pains. That's one of the diagnostic procedures. So you basically shorten the time between the two successive by increasing heart rate rate. You don't want to do it too much, but it actually is a good tool. This, of course, is the cardiac output, and most of this occurs during the phase, and it's downstream from the aortic valve. So just to show you what a couple of things, one of the things you could actually do with this sort of diagnostic by sticking cannula and measuring pressures, of course, if you have problems with the aortic valve. If the aortic valve is stenosis, due to rheumatic fever or something, then of course you can look at the pressure in the aorta, and the pressure in the ventricle suggests that the valve isn't opening properly. So you have a large pressure gradient. This is the pressure that you actually see in the major artery, and this is the pressure that's developed by the left ventricle. So you're not taking out enough blood. This is actually from a diagnostic approach. Now, when you go and see your friendly neighborhood physician, you measure your blood pressure, you get the two numbers. The standard one always is in textbooks 120 millimeters over 80 millimeters. And 120 millimeters is the peak systole, or the peak pressure. And the diastolic pressure is this guy here, the lowest pressure. So 120 over 80 isn't bad. 140 over 170 or so is bad. So anyway, so this is a normal blood pressure. And there's one kind of pressure that's used clinically or used for calculations. It's called the mean arterial pressure. So the way that's done is you're taking the average pressure over one cardiac cycle. So you round up the peak, and so the mean arterial pressure is sitting somewhere there. So you take the average, or take the area, and average it over one cardiac cycle. Your physicist who is called doing the root mean squared, same thing. But basically, that's the average pressure over this cycle. So we kind of kill some of this, and we add some into the diastolic pressure. So there's a couple other pressures that sometimes I do. Pulse pressure is the systolic pressure minus the diastolic pressure. So that's simply the peak. So it's simply the peak minus the mean, and this is the pulse pressure. So the pulse pressure is this pressure here. The mean pressure, there's ways of approximating it. The mean arterial pressure would be diastolic pressure for the third of the pulse pressure. And that's okay in most peripheral arteries. If you measure the pressure, so if you're doing it as your physician might, that's okay. That's roughly a good approximation. However, if you're measuring the pressure at the aorta, it would be about 1/2. We're not going to worry about that. Blood pressure may be measured directly or indirectly. The usual thing you do is you do indirect measurements using a sphygmomanometer, stethoscope, called a Victorian method, and you're listening to something called Korsakoff sound. So basically, a spurt of origin, a disturbed blood flow, spurt of blood meets a static column, you get sound. And this sort of pulse thing, a spurt of blood hitting a static column gives you vibrations in the vessel walls. So these are called Korsakoff sounds. So basically, if you're looking at a little bit of physics, if you put a stethoscope over your brachial artery, you shouldn't hear anything because the flow is at what's called laminar, and it should be silent. If you compress your arteries so that there is either complete compression or just a little bit of blood laminar flow squirting through here, hitting a static column, you get vibration on the vessel wall, and you get some sound. So that's the basis of the Korsakoff sounds, and here's the way it occurs. You put a sphygmomanometer and cuff. You inflate the cuff to a pressure that's above arterial pressure. So in case you get no flow, no sound. So basically you then start to release the cuff until you get to the point where you have a spurt of blood at the systolic pressure, the highest pressure hitting the static column, and you start getting a sound. That would be the indication of your systolic pressure, maximum pressure. Beginners usually overestimate, underestimate. When you get a good head nurse, they're within a few millimeters of where they've done it a million times, and they're very good at it. And then, of course, you keep releasing the cuff until it gets silent again. That's your diastolic pressure. Getting back to my normal flow. Very simple. You've all done this in high school, I'm sure, or had it done to you. But that's the basics. And you get different kinds of sounds, and amateurs have a bit of trouble because of the way it works, but people with a lot of experience not going to be able. Okay, well, then the other point I want to make when we're tackling is the blood pressure changes along our arteries of systemic circulation. There's this decrease in diastolic pressure, that's the lowest one, and maybe an increase in pulse pressure compared to the aorta in the peripheral and large distributing arteries. So it changes. Reason for this, of course, viscoelastic properties of the large arteries. We'll talk about that next day a bit. And reflection, pressure waves of branches. That's a major one. So you want to have a quick glance before packing in. This is the kind of pressure, pulse pressure you will get at different locations. This is the pressure measured in the aortic arch, including what I forgot to mention, the diacrotic notch, where you get a reversal of flow at the aortic valve. So this is the pressure as you go through the thoracic artery, which is halfway down here, chest, iliac and the leg, and the femoral. So the pulse pressure gets bigger as you go down the arterial system. And the majority of that is due to reflections of branches. You get summation. So if you measure the pulse at the aorta, it's going to be about 110. You might go to the femoral artery, which is the one in your leg, then it might be 140. So pulse pressure increases as you go down the arterial system. The major reason for this is reflections of branches, so you get summation. And we'll carry on next day.
Yeah, of course.